Frank Carter never thought about life after death. A history teacher for over 30 years, he believed in facts, logic, and things that could be proven. Heaven, miracles, the supernatural. Those were ideas for others to ponder. He had lived a good life, raised a loving family, and never gave much thought to what might come after. But all of that changed on a cold November evening. It started with a sharp pain in his chest. At first, he thought it was just indigestion, but within seconds, the pain spread like fire, radiating down his left arm. His vision blurred, and the world around him spun. He collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. His wife screamed his name as she dialed 911, her hands shaking. By the time paramedics arrived, Frank was barely holding on. His pulse was weak. His skin was cold. They worked frantically to stabilize him, rushing him into the ambulance. Sirens wailed through the night as his wife followed behind, praying with every fiber of her being. And then, his heart stopped. In the middle of that ambulance ride, Frank Carter was declared clinically dead. No pulse, no breath, no signs of life. For the next 14 minutes, doctors and nurses fought desperately to revive him. Chest compressions, shocks from the defibrillator, tubes, IVs, machines beeping wildly. Every second counted. But Frank? Frank wasn't there anymore. What happened in those 14 minutes defies explanation. At first, he felt nothing. No pain, no panic, just a strange, weightless sensation, as if he were floating. He became aware of the room below him, watching as doctors frantically worked over his lifeless body. He saw his wife in the hallway sobbing, gripping the arms of a nurse who was trying to console her. He could hear the voices of the medical team, the beeping of machines, even the distant cries of another patient down the hall. But then, the hospital faded away. Everything around him became light, warm, golden, all-encompassing. It wasn't just light that he saw, he could feel it. It filled him with peace beyond anything he had ever known. It was not the blinding glare of the sun, nor the artificial glow of lamps, but a living, breathing presence. A sound unlike anything on earth filled the space around him. It was music, but not of instruments. It was as if the air itself was singing, harmonizing in perfect, divine melodies. The sound resonated deep within him, stirring something long buried in his soul. And then, he saw them. Figures, radiant and glowing, stood before him. Not harsh in their brightness, but soft, comforting. Their faces were not distinct. Yet he knew, without question, that they were beings of pure love. He felt no fear, only overwhelming peace. Before him stood a gate, massive, endless, shimmering in a way beyond human understanding, and beyond it, a city glowing with a brilliance that made earthly gold seem dull. It stretched endlessly, yet somehow it felt close, familiar, like home. He wanted to step forward. He wanted to stay, but something held him back. A presence, greater than the light, greater than the music, greater than anything his human mind could comprehend, filled the space around him. It was love itself. It was peace. It was power. And it told him without words that it was not his time. Suddenly, everything shifted. The light dimmed. The music faded. The feeling of warmth began to slip away. And then, Frank Carter gasped for air. His eyes shot open. The bright lights of the hospital room came into focus. The doctors and nurses, who had been ready to declare him gone, froze in shock. Machines beeped wildly as his heart, silent for 14 full minutes, began to beat once more. His wife, standing just outside the room, heard the commotion and rushed inside. Tears flooded her eyes as she saw him, alive, awake, breathing. But Frank was no longer the same man who had collapsed in their home just an hour before. Something within him had changed. His body, according to medical science, should have suffered severe damage. 14 minutes without oxygen is more than enough time for the brain to shut down permanently. He should have woken up confused, impaired, or unable to function. But instead, his mind was clearer than ever. Tests after tests showed no logical explanation for his survival. No brain damage, no organ failure, nothing. It was as if his body had simply restarted itself, but science had no answer for why. Frank, however, knew the truth. He had seen what lay beyond this life. He had stood at the edge of something eternal, and he had been sent back for a reason. His recovery was swift, defying all medical expectations. Within days, he was walking. Within weeks, he was back home, telling his story. And the more he shared, the more he realized. He had been given a second chance, not just to live, but to believe. The man who had once dismissed miracles now spoke of them with unwavering certainty. The teacher who had spent years lecturing on history now spent his days teaching about faith, about hope, about what waits beyond this world. Doctors still struggle to explain his case. Some call it an anomaly, others call it luck. But Frank Carter knows better. He knows what he saw, he knows what he felt, and he knows with every fiber of his being that heaven is real. And sometimes, God gives us a glimpse of what's waiting for us on the other side.